State of Cannabis.
This is the State of Cannabis News Digest, a roundup of this week's key developments in the cannabis industry. Our top stories.
This week, safety and regulation take center stage. In Arizona and Maine, contaminated cannabis products have triggered recalls. One for possible fungal and heavy metal contamination, another for dangerous pesticide residues, raising questions about testing standards in an expanding marketplace. Across Michigan, lawmakers are weighing tougher penalties for illicit grows, while Missouri and Ohio wrestle with how to police the fast-moving hemp-THC market, one through new enforcement crackdowns, the other through a political standoff between the governor and state legislators. Further west, Idaho, Kansas, and New Hampshire show the spectrum of legalization momentum, from Idaho's fresh signature drive to New Hampshire's slow but persistent push, even as public opinion remains high but patience wears thin. And on the national stage, two landmark debates unfold. The U.S. Supreme Court will decide whether cannabis users can legally own firearms, and a coalition of state attorneys general is urging Congress to close the loopholes around intoxicating hemp. Kentucky's senators stand on opposite sides, one calling for a ban, the other for regulation. Stay with us. We'll break down what these developments mean for patients, policymakers, and producers, and what they signal about the future of America's cannabis landscape.
And now here is the deeper look at the key events in the cannabis world this week.
This week brought two major cannabis stories with national implications, one about gun rights and another about hemp regulation. And once again, Kentucky is right in the middle of both debates. First, the U.S. Supreme Court has agreed to hear United States v. Hemani, a case that could decide whether Americans who use marijuana, even legally under state law, can own or possess firearms. Federal law bans gun ownership for anyone who's an unlawful user of a controlled substance. But after the court's 2022 Bruin decision, which changed how gun laws are reviewed, lower courts have split on whether that ban violates the Second Amendment. Some judges say it's unconstitutional to punish someone just for using cannabis. Others say the rule still applies. If the justices uphold the law, medical marijuana patients will remain barred from buying or owning guns. If they strike it down, the restriction could narrow, possibly allowing state legal users to keep their rights as long as they're not impaired or posing a threat. The ruling, expected next year, could bring clarity for patients, gun dealers, and lawyers caught between state and federal law. Meanwhile, hemp is back in the national spotlight. A bipartisan group of 37 attorneys general is urging Congress to crack down on intoxicating hemp products, things like Delta-8 and THCO, which are made from hemp but can still get users high. The attorneys general say those products are being sold online and in stores with packaging that appeals to kids, and they argue only Congress can close the loophole that allows them to cross state lines. Kentucky's congressional delegation is split. Senator Mitch McConnell, who helped legalize hemp in 2018, now supports banning hemp-derived intoxicants to preserve the Farm Bill's original intent. Senator Rand Paul disagrees. He's threatening to block any spending bill that includes a hemp ban, pushing instead for regulation through his proposed HEMP Act. That plan would raise allowable THC limits and set national rules for testing, labeling, and age limits. The issue is now tied up in negotiations to end the government shutdown, meaning hemp policy could be decided as part of a broader budget deal.
In Ohio, the debate over hemp and cannabis has split into two arenas, one in the courts and another in the State House. In Franklin County, a judge has extended a temporary restraining order that blocks Governor Mike DeWine's executive order banning intoxicating hemp. The pause keeps such products on shelves through at least December 2nd, while retailers argue that the governor exceeded his authority. They claim Ohio law does not classify compliant hemp as adulterated, meaning their products remain legal under existing rules. That courtroom decision gives more than 4,000 small businesses a short reprieve. If the order expires before lawmakers act, enforcement could move quickly, shutting down a large share of Ohio's hemp market. Meanwhile, lawmakers continue to wrestle with how to regulate the same products. The Ohio House recently passed an amended version of Senate Bill 56, which would allow sales only by licensed retailers to adults 21 and older, require testing and packaging standards, and apply a 10% excise tax. It also sets aside exemptions for CBD and certain THC drinks. But one day later, the Senate unanimously rejected that House rewrite. Senators said the new version left too many gaps, especially around synthetic THC and untested hemp products. They also raised concerns about how THC beverages would be limited, how taxation would work, and whether cities and counties should have control over hemp dispensaries. The Senate president noted that the House's changes built an entirely new regulatory system, and many members were unwilling to sign off without further revision. The bill's sponsor, Republican Senator Steve Huffman, has said his goal is to merge oversight of hemp, medical marijuana, and recreational cannabis under a new division of marijuana control within the Department of Commerce. The disagreement now moves to a conference committee, where lawmakers from both chambers will try to reconcile their differences. If lawmakers reach a deal, Ohio could see a new, consolidated system by next year.
Missouri's hemp-THC market is facing new scrutiny from both regulators and the cannabis industry. Attorney General Catherine Hanaway says her office will crack down on hemp-derived THC beverages now sold in convenience stores and bars. She calls the products unregulated and unsafe, especially for young people. No new laws have taken effect yet, but her move marks Missouri's first real step toward regulating hemp-based intoxicants. Meanwhile, the state's cannabis trade group, MoCanTrade, says lab tests show widespread problems. Of 55 hemp-THC products bought from stores, 96% failed to meet federal limits, and nearly a third contained contaminants. One tested at 89% THC, far above the 0.3% legal limit for hemp. A hemp farmer in Maurice County described the market as a Wild West, saying his farm follows the rules but welcomes enforcement to weed out unsafe products. Lawmakers have reintroduced bills that would require hemp-THC drinks to be sold only in licensed dispensaries. That could remove THC beverages from bars and grocery stores. Missouri's regulated cannabis market, which sold nearly $1.5 billion last year, may soon tighten further as the state decides how to handle hemp-derived intoxicants.
Massachusetts's cannabis scene just keeps growing. And this November, it all comes together at the Harvest Cup 2025, happening November 8th and 9th at the DCU Center in Worcester. It's New England's biggest celebration of cannabis innovation, featuring live competitions, new product launches, and industry leaders from across the region. Whether you're a grower, business owner, or simply passionate about the plant, this is the place to connect, learn, and experience what's next in cannabis. Tickets are available now at Ticketmaster and the DCU Center box office. And while you're there, don't forget to stop by and meet our friends at MassachusettsCannabis.org. They'll be at booth 608, right in the center of the exhibit hall.
Michigan lawmakers are considering a 4-bill cannabis package. It would raise penalties for large illicit grows, add a clear 200-gram limit for concentrates, and let regulators sanction businesses even after licenses expire or suspend them quickly if public safety is at risk. HB 5105 would scale penalties for illegal manufacturing from misdemeanors at lower weights to felonies with higher fines and prison terms for quantities above 250 kilograms or 1,000 plants, and for 25 kilograms or more of concentrates. HB 5107 adds a 200-gram personal possession limit for concentrates while keeping the 12-plant home grow and 10-ounce in-residence limits. Those two are tie-barred and must pass together. Two companion bills, HB 5104 and HB 5106, expand the Cannabis Regulatory Agency's reach. They allow discipline to continue against former licensees and authorize summary suspensions when conduct puts health or safety at risk, including untraceable inventory or obstruction of investigations. Regulators told lawmakers that low penalties have made Michigan a hub for illicit operations, including large outdoor grows. Prosecutors backed the package, flagging worker exploitation risks. Committee Chair Joseph Aragona also referenced the 24% tax, saying enforcement should support legal operators who pay it. The committee did not advance the bills, but the hearing signaled interest in curbing illegal supply and tightening compliance.
In Arizona, 2 marijuana flower products have been voluntarily recalled after tests found possible contamination with aspergillus, a common fungus, and lead. The recall, announced by the Arizona Department of Health Services, affects Elba Holdings' Scrooge strain and Saint's Bruce banner from Green Medicine. Officials say no illnesses have been reported, but they're urging consumers not to use the products and to dispose of them safely. Aspergillus can cause allergic reactions or infections, particularly in people with weakened immune systems. Lead exposure can lead to fatigue, irritability, or abdominal pain. Producers responded quickly once notified, removing the affected batches from shelves and working with retailers to prevent further sales. The recall follows previous contamination issues in Arizona and showcases the challenges of maintaining product safety in a rapidly expanding cannabis market. For medical patients and recreational users alike, the recall may serve as a reminder to stay informed about where their cannabis comes from and how it's tested.
Maine's Office of Cannabis Policy is asking consumers to check their vape cartridges. On October 27th, regulators issued a mandatory recall for Yanni Watermelon Chimera live resin cartridges produced by Norco Outdoor Cannabis. The recall follows a consumer complaint that led to testing, which found unsafe levels of the pesticide chlorphenapyr in a specific batch. The action targets half-gram and 1-gram cartridges that were sold at 21 adult-use retailers statewide between July 10th and October 16th, 2025. OCP says inhaling cannabis with unsafe chlorphenapyr may lead to high fever, sweating, nausea, vomiting, or altered mental status. Consumers are urged to visit the Maine's Office of Cannabis Policy website to verify the batch number on packaging and stop use if it matches.
As cannabis reform continues to move forward across the country, all eyes are on Texas. And one event is leading the conversation with facts, data, and direction. The Texas Cannabis Policy Conference, presented by the Texas Cannabis Policy Center, returns January 29th through 31st at the Thompson Conference Center on the University of Texas at Austin campus. This year's theme, Maintaining Momentum for Effective Cannabis Policy, brings together lawmakers, medical professionals, researchers, entrepreneurs, and advocates to focus on what's next, from medical access and regulatory integrity to innovation, safety, and civic action. If you believe Texas deserves smart, responsible cannabis policy, this is where the dialogue begins. Registration is open now at texascannabisconference.org. Students attend free with registration. That's texascannabisconference.org, where Texas comes together to shape a responsible cannabis future.
A new push to legalize medical marijuana is underway in Idaho. The Natural Medicine Alliance of Idaho has started collecting signatures for the Idaho Medical Cannabis Act, which would let patients with qualifying conditions access medical cannabis from licensed dispensaries. The act would reclassify marijuana from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2, permit doctors to recommend it for conditions like cancer or chronic pain, and provide legal protections for patients and caregivers. It would also cap business licenses to keep the program small and closely regulated. To qualify for the November 2026 ballot, the campaign needs more than 70,000 valid signatures. Another advocacy group, Kind Idaho, has paused its own legalization effort to support this one, saying cooperation gives reform its best chance yet. Still, Idaho's political climate remains resistant. Lawmakers rejected recent reform proposals and even considered tougher penalties for possession. Voters next year will also decide on a constitutional amendment that could block future citizen-led legalization efforts. If the campaign succeeds, Idaho could finally join nearly every other U.S. state in offering legal medical cannabis to patients in need.
Public support for marijuana reform in Kansas remains strong, though recent data show a slight shift in attitudes. The 2025 Kansas Speaks survey from Fort Hays State University's Docking Institute of Public Affairs found that 70% of adults support legal medical cannabis, down slightly from 73% in 2024. Support for recreational legalization fell from 61% to 59% over the same period. Opposition grew for both issues, with more Kansans expressing firm opinions and fewer saying they were unsure. About 14% now oppose medical marijuana, and roughly 1 in 4 oppose recreational use. The survey, conducted between September 26th and October 10th, also found that more voters are linking cannabis policy to politics. 65% said they would likely support a candidate who backs medical marijuana legalization, up 5 points from last year. Researchers said the results suggest the issue is gaining visibility, even as enthusiasm softens slightly. Kansas remains one of the few states without a legal marijuana program. Governor Laura Kelly continues to push for medical cannabis, saying it could help patients and add tax revenue. Senate leaders, including Republican President Ty Masterson, remain opposed, citing risks to youth and public safety.
New Hampshire lawmakers have once again moved a marijuana legalization bill forward. The House Commerce Committee voted 10-7 to advance a proposal that would allow adults to buy and grow cannabis and would tax sales under the state's existing structure. Supporters say it's time to align state law with public opinion, noting that about 70% of residents back legalization. But despite that support, the measure faces steep political resistance. Governor Kelly Ayotte has vowed to veto any legalization bill, and Senate leaders have shown little appetite for reform. While the bill's chances this session are slim, the vote signals that cannabis reform remains a priority for many legislators. And with more proposals already planned for 2026, New Hampshire's debate over marijuana legalization shows no signs of fading.
This was the State of Cannabis News Digest, available weekly. You can listen to us on all main podcast platforms. To make sure you don't miss out on the latest updates and in-depth analysis of the cannabis industry, be sure to subscribe to our podcast. By subscribing, you'll get notifications for each new episode, helping you stay informed and ahead in the ever-evolving cannabis market. Join us next Saturday for more insights. Until then, keep thriving and stay green.